East Canaan, Connecticut.
Izzy, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Can you tell me where you were living at that time?
I was living in Winsted.
Winsted, Connecticut?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall the date?
It was September the 24th, 1940.
Why did you enlist?
Because there was a lack of work, and I thought that there'd be something better to do in the Navy than outside. It was, and also there was a fellow that was in the Navy that came home on leave, and we had a long talk about the service, and he says, when you get down to Waterbury, go in to the post office and check and see for yourself what they have to offer.
Why did you select the Navy?
Because of the seeing him and his beautiful dress and condition.
So what did you do to enlist? Did you have to go down to Waterbury?
I went down to Waterbury with my mother. She was going to visit a friend of hers, and while she was visiting, I took the opportunity to go to the post office, and I finally found the office that they were in, and the chief in the room saw me looking in, and he says, "Come on in. There's nothing, you know, that you shouldn't see, and we can talk about whether you want to go in the Navy or not." And I says, "Well, I'm not sure. I just come down to see what, you know, they had to offer." And he says, "Well, why don't you take the examination while you're here?" I says, "Oh, I don't know about that," but he finally convinced me to take it. And after he checked it all out, he said, "You see, you passed it in beautiful condition." I says, "That's good." And a few minutes later, he asked me, when was the last time that I had a physical? I says, "A physical? What is that?" And he says, "The doctor will give you an examination." And so the doctor happened to be in, and they gave me a physical while I was there, and the doctor says that he didn't think there'd be any problem for me to go into the Navy, you know. So they took my address, and I think they said that it might be months before they, you know, would contact me. But 2-3 weeks later, I was working with my dad, cutting wood for the winter, and this green Plymouth drove up to the house, and Lord and behold, it was the Navy chief. And my father says, what does he want? And I told my dad that he maybe wants to know if I want to go in the Navy. And he says, oh, I'm going to lose a son. So finally I prevailed on Dad to sit down and we'd talk about it. And after talking a while and making him, I told him I would make money and in the Navy, and I would be able to send it home, because he was only working maybe 1 day a week. I says I'd send the money home, and I would be some help rather than another mouth to feed. And so he says, finally he says, okay, if you want to go in the Navy, long as it's not the Army, because he put 3 years in the First World War, and he knew what the Army consisted of, and he says, I wouldn't want you to go in the Army.
So did you enlist right then while the chief was there?
No, the chief, when he was all through, he said maybe in 3-4 months or maybe even a year, you might not hear, anything. And then there again, a couple weeks later, a big envelope came in the mail, and Lord and behold, it said, make yourself available in New Haven, Connecticut, to be, interviewed as to if you wanted to go into the Navy. And so I thank God I had asked a buddy of mine if he wanted to come with me, and my mom. We drove to New Haven, and it was a classroom, and it was full with these young fellas, that were attending. And I said to myself, I'm going to sit up front so I can understand everything they're talking about, rather than to be way in the back. And I sat in the first row, and the third seat back. The other two were occupied. And lo and behold, the chief came out after a while, and he says, well, fellas, we need a couple of you guys. And he says, 1, 2, 3, 4, stay, and the rest of you go home. And Lord and behold, I was the third one, and I says, does it mean that I'm going to be in the Navy? He says, sure thing. And I says, will I be able to see my mother again before I, because they're with me? And he says, sure, we'll let you do that. I said, how about my clothes? Will I be able to ship them back or what? He says, don't worry about anything. Once you're in the Navy does everything. And that's the way it was. I joined the Navy that day. That was September the 24th.
And did you have a chance to go home before you had to report
No.
for basic training? You went right then and there?
Right then and there.
Where did you go for your basic training?
Newport, Rhode Island.
How long did that last?
Well, that was another thing that was very unusual. Usually it took 3 months of training for the Navy. And we were the first company, Company 32, that had only 3 weeks of training. And they sent us right aboard ship in Philadelphia that we were going to put in commission. It was a brand new ship.
What was the name of the ship?
The USS Curtis. 2 S's.
So, why did you only receive the 3 weeks of training? Because they were ready for that ship to go and they needed you right then?
They needed the crew.
What was your small amount of time, your 3 weeks of training like? What did you learn in that 3 weeks?
Well, just about to march a little while and just to wear the uniform and just Navy nomenclature or whatever you might want to call it, but it wasn't very much. We didn't get much training.
Wow. Now, when you boarded the ship, were you going to head right out to sea, or would you have further training?
Well, when we got aboard ship, it took about 3 weeks or 4 weeks to load the ship up of all the equipment that that a ship usually has aboard. And we had, it's funny, it's 3 months of shakedown cruise going out to the Pacific, not the Pacific, but going out into the Atlantic and the Caribbean, and to see what the ship could do, because they wanted to be sure that it would perform.
So you went on how many shakedown cruises?
One, only once, 3 weeks, 3 months.
3 months in the Atlantic?
Mm-hmm. And we came back to Philadelphia.
And then after that, where did you go?
Well, we had to go to Newport for torpedoes, and we had to go to Bremerton. No, not Bremerton, but that one I forgot. Right across the bay from Norfolk, Virginia, for our degaussing gear. That is it isn't a weapon, but it's a security cable that goes completely around the ship that would detract, it wouldn't attract, but detract magnetic mines, in case that there was some mines in the water. It would detract the ship, neutralize the ship in the water.
Izzy, what was your job on board the ship?
Well, the first 3 months, they put me as captain of the head.
What did that entail?
Well, that entailed cleaning and maintain it was a big head that was about 40 foot long and about I would say 10 feet wide. There was four showers, and there was maybe I think there was four basins to wash in, and then there was a long row of toilets, you know, partitioned on the other side of the head. But I used to clean them every day, clean and wash the mirrors and the showers, and I did that for 3 months.
What did you do after that job? What was the next job?
That was my only job.
After that 3 months, what did you go on to?
Well, the thing is that our petty officer says, Tad, they used to call me Tad for Tadiello, and he said, Tad, would you like to do another 3 months of captain of the head? And to me, it was nothing. It was a piece of cake. I didn't have to work hardly at all. I would be finished by noontime, and I would be free the rest of the day to read and to do whatever I like to do. And I says, if you want me to be the captain of the head, I don't mind, but I don't want to spend it all the 6 years that I've got to serve in the head. And he says, well, you mean to tell me you're volunteering for work? And I says, well, maybe you might call it that, but I'd like to get to do some other thing, you know, that I'd learned something from. And he says, what do you think? And he says, I told him I'd like to get into the captain's gig. That's the captain's private boat. And he said, yeah, that's a pretty good tootie, huh? And he says, well, I'll tell you, I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, you stay in the captain's head. Not the captain's head, but the second division. I took care of the second division head, and the chief says, we'll see what we can do anyhow. And sure enough, I think it was maybe a month later, he came and he says, well, you're going to be relieved. You're going to go into the captain's gig. And I spent, believe it or not, 2.5 years as captain of the head. And as I made my rates, I was in the gig. But when I made second class petty officer, then the captain didn't rate a person that was more than a third class. So I had to go to work. I was assigned to the boat deck with maybe about 40 people, 40 sailors. We took care of the boat deck completely, polished and washed and scrubbed the deck, painted if it needed painting, and we was maintenance.
Izzy, what can you remember about the USS Curtis? Can you describe the ship to me?
Oh, the ship was a floating hotel. It was beautiful. It was 800 and some feet long, and it had everything brand new in it, and it was built to serve, you know, in peacetime, so that when the war started, they had to take and strip all the decks of the material that might explode or might burn, and it was the boat deck was 100 foot off the water, and it was a beautiful floating hotel, you might say. We had beautiful bunks to sleep in.
How many men were on board?
650 men.
Now, when you left the United States on the USS Curtis, did you know where you were headed?
I think so, because it was peacetime, and there was no secret about anything that was happening. We left. The exact date was around June the 1st. We left Philadelphia fully equipped, and we went down the Atlantic through the Panama to San Diego. We was in San Diego for a week or two, and then we went right to Hawaii, where we made it our home port.
And that was at Pearl Harbor?
At Pearl Harbor.
What was the base at Pearl Harbor like at that time? Because this was before
the war. It was one of the major harbors, Navy harbor, of the whole United States. It was the main harbor. Another main harbor was in the Atlantic, was in Cuba. It was I can't think of the
Havana. Was it Havana?
It was no, it wasn't Havana. It was Port.
That's okay. You were in the Pacific. Now, when you got to Pearl Harbor, what were your duties? Did you stay aboard your ship, or were you barracked at land?
We were aboard ship constantly.
So you actually lived on ship?
Oh, sure. It was beautiful. It was a floating hotel.
So you arrived in June.
Yeah.
So you had some months before Pearl Harbor was bombed. In that first 6 months during peacetime, What was life like?
We were going from island to island. Like I said, we were cruising from island to island, and in November, I would say November the 15th, for the sake of a date, we loaded aboard ship 12 F4F Grumman planes, and we got underway, and we went to Wake and Midway, and there we discharged 6 Grumman planes to each island. We didn't know why they were supplying them, because like I said, it was still peacetime, and this was November, don't forget. December 7th wasn't far off. So it took us 3 weeks to do all the discharging and sailing around, doing nothing. We had target practice, and like I said, it was like cruising around. And we pulls into Pearl Harbor, returned, pulls into Pearl Harbor December the 6th.
Wow.
December the 6th, 1941.
So tell me what happened in the next 24 hours, where you were.
Well, because there's only one dock on Ford Island that the ship can moor to, and that was our pier. But when we got in there, there was another ship in place there discharging aviation engines. So they sent us to another location where we moored until our berth was free, you know, and that's where we were the following morning.
Wow. So you were you sleeping when the attack hit?
I had the duty in the captain's gig. So I got up Sunday morning. I got up at regular reveille at 5 o'clock. But the rest of the crew that didn't have duty slept. They were sleeping in the bunk, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day, sunny, a Hawaiian day. And I had eaten breakfast, and I had, I think it was a funny book, and I went up on the deck, the after deck, and sat there waiting for the services. They were going to have service aboard ship for the Catholic boys, and that's where I was when the first bomb started falling. I was sitting there, and all at once I heard this terrific explosion. It would sound like rather than a bang, and it looked like it was digging into, dirt and then exploding. and it seemed like it was over there by our planes. We had 36 planes attached to us, but they were not aboard ship because we couldn't carry them. They were big planes, 2 engines, and they were water, seaplanes. And we were the mother ship for them. They were all on land. They put 2 wheels on them in the water, and they would tow them up into the berths, and that's where I thought the first bomb that I heard was right among our planes, and we understood that they were told to destroy the aviation part of Pearl Harbor and the battleships first thing. All the other stuff, the obsolete stuff, to take care of later on. But the first things were the planes and the battleship with the torpedoes, and the planes were with the bombs and machine guns, and so that the first wave of planes that came in, they dropped their torpedoes and they exploded in the battleships, and they bombed the heavy cruisers and the destroyers, anything that was warships. And they didn't bother us right away. After they dropped all the bombs and stuff, they would come over by us and machine gunned us. And it was 10 or 15 minutes before we were able to get any ammunition. It was all secured in the handling rooms. And we went to our gun station, and there may be one fella beside myself on one of the machine guns I was stationed, and we didn't have any ammunition, and all we had to do was wait and stay as hidden as possible, because they were machine gunning the top deck of the ship, and that's where I was, on the top deck. And so we waited until we got ammunition, and then finally when we got ammunition, we were credited with 7 planes we put afire. And
Izzy, what was your first reaction, and what were you thinking when that first wave of planes and that first bomb was dropped? What did you think was happening?
I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know we were mad at the Japanese. I didn't know what they looked like, the planes. They had round sun circles on the plane, and didn't know any of that. I thought something had happened over there, an explosion of a furnace or something, and I said, well, we'll be called away to go and help, because that's usually every ship sent something to help, recover. And I no sooner had that in my mind when the world exploded, there was bombs and torpedoes going off like crazy. There was so many planes in the sky, you couldn't believe it. I don't know how they didn't run into each other, the Japanese planes. And when they came to us after they discharged all their bombs and stuff, they come over by us and machine gunned us. And it was that way for, I would say, it wasn't as long as you would think, maybe a half hour, but I don't think it was that long. It happened fast. And then
when it happened on your ship, did the captain call you all to man your battle stations?
Oh, that we were on our station long before that. You know,
you knew when you figured out it wasn't just a furnace explosion. You knew you were all being bombed.
They said that this was no drill. This is no drill. Go to your fire station or your gun station and do what you have to do. Some boys were appointed to close doors. Everybody had something to do in case we were attacked. And like I said, the first wave, we had a plane on the deck and they put it afire. It was our training ship, and they put that afire right away. And there was nothing else on the there was one plane that we put afire, went out. It was burning. It went out about 1,000 or 2,000 yards, did a flip, and came back to the ship and smashed right into one of the $1 million cranes that we had. Spewed oil and gas all over the place.
This was right on the USS Curtis?
Yes. Oh, yes. Did you see the picture of the fire?
No, but I'll look at it later.
In the album. Yeah.
So during this whole time you were manning a machine gun?
No, not I wasn't no gunner.
What were you?
I was a runner, going after the ammunition and bringing it to the gun. You know, the ammunition was up against the bulkhead of one of the bulk walls, and it was a hoist, and you know, it would bring up the ammunition from down below inside the ship, bring it up topside, then you take it. There were cases about that high and that wide and about that thick, and we would bring it over to the gun, and when one was finished, I lifted it off the water-cooled machine gun and replace it with another case of ammunition and jack it twice to get the ammunition in the gun. Once it was in the gun, then they didn't have to. They had to eject it for the first firing.
So your job was to keep running back and getting more ammunition and bringing it to the gun?
Mm-hmm, as they needed it.
Wow, so what did you do? You must have been pretty anxious when you had no ammunition to bring them at the beginning until they could get the ammo.
I guess I was scared. I'm still shaking from when didn't know for nothing why this was happening. or how come, that would I survive the war? All these little things were going through your mind as it was. We were told around 2 o'clock that afternoon, the first time, stand by to abandon ship, because we were listing over like this, it was taking on water. We wasn't hit by no torpedo, but the bomb that did hit us right inside caused considerable damage. It was terrible. The boat deck was afire, and actually they said one man from each gun handle the hoses, fight fire, and I was one of them that they let go to pull the hose, to the fire. And I was in beautiful white uniform because I was in his special boat. And did it get messed up? I had to throw them away. I slipped one time on oil and I fell, but and I was oil from head to foot. The mess, it was a mess. We were weeks getting things back in shape.
When they said to stand by to abandon ship at 2 o'clock, what did you do to prepare to abandon ship?
We looked for a spot that we could jump off.
Did you have life jackets on?
Yes, we had life jackets. That was one of the rules of GQ, General Quarters. See, and we had, let's see, the life jackets on, and then they canceled the order of abandoned ship, and so that we was able to go, because we were, some of the crew was assigned to boats, for saving. Others were assigned pontoons or whatever they are that was in the water. We were all assigned to places to abandon ship at. But around 4 o'clock, we were told to stand by to abandon ship again, because it was listing in the other direction. The water displaced. But we, after an hour or so, we were told to cancel that order too. So we saved the ship. It didn't sink. The bulkheads were buckled out, from the explosions. Terrible.
Wow. During the battle, could you see what was happening around you in the harbor and all
sure.
the other ships?
We couldn't see the battleships because where we were sent was on the other side of the island. And the side of the island where all the battleship row, we called it, that was on the other side, the starboard side of the island, and we were moored on the left-hand side of the island for until our berth was available. Then our berth was right on at the head of the long battleship row. And there was one battleship on this side of the island, moored up against Fort Island. That was the Navy base. The Army base was Hickam Field, and there was Schofield Barracks. That was another Army base on the island. And there was several other places where they had distributed planes, only, you know, a strip and planes. There was no base. In other words, it was just to have planes distributed around the island for, you know, proper protection.
Do you know what happened to the ship that was in your berth?
It didn't get hit. They didn't bother it because it was a cargo ship. They just, like I said, they were after the
big
battleship.
What kind of a ship was the USS Curtis?
A seaplane tender.
Oh.
That's why I said we had 36 planes, seaplanes attached to us. We would go to an island, and they would fly to that island and moor all around us. And they had their little places, and we would have to take the crew in a boat and bring it to the ship, to the planes, when they had the duty.
Now, at the end of the day, at 4 o'clock, you were standing by to abandon ship, and then they canceled that order. What did you have to do? What was the rest of that day like? Because your ship was still badly damaged.
We were cleaning up cleaning up the mess, the big part of the mess. We couldn't do everything, but we were put to clean things up, taking up the body parts of the Japanese that was in the plane, and just cleaning up where the fire was on the boat deck and on the after ship deck. Where will I show you the picture of it? That was quite a fire. We had oil burning is terrible, and gas, of course, exploded and spread the fire, and then it was the oil that was burning, that besides the wood on the ship, was burning. But we were just working at getting the biggest part cleaned up. Then when we were available, we went, instead of to our berth, we went over to one of the berths on the island, instead of Fort Island, on the island, so that they could patch up the holes, so that we could go back to the States and get, repaired. We ate. They brought us sandwiches. The mess hall was a mess. They couldn't cook and stuff like that. The following days, we were brought food from the island, and
so you would sleep on shore and then go back during the day to work on the boat and make it seaworthy?
Well, no, we slept on the ship.
Oh, you did?
Yes. Our compartment was at the rear, and it wasn't affected by the fire. There was some places that were not affected, and they made their bunks, and we slept there.
So you could sleep on board, but you couldn't eat on board, so they brought all your meals over to you?
Yeah, meals and water and anything that, we needed to operate.
After that day of the actual bombing, did you have an opportunity to go on shore and see any of the other damage that had been done?
Oh, yeah. I don't recall how many days it was that we were, the only thing I can say is that on February the 14th, we were back to Pearl and underway, and we went across the equator the 14th of February, 1942.
Now, was that on your way back to the United States so that you...
No, we had gone back to Hawaii, Pearl, and where we went, the first cruise was to New Caledonia, Espiritu Santo.
Before you headed to New Caledonia, were you able to repair your ship completely at Pearl?
No, we came back to the States.
Oh, and they repaired it in the United States?
Yeah, but we didn't stay long, just repaired.
Where did you go in the United States to make the repairs?
San Francisco.
So after they repaired the ship in San Francisco, then you went back to Pearl?
Pearl, mm-hmm.
Then you headed to New Caledonia?
Mm-hmm.
And you crossed the equator, and did you have that ceremony that they...
We sure did, but it was short-lived because during the war, they usually the ceremony took 3 days. The first day was issuing the subpoenas, real subpoenas. They if you were a pollywog, you got a charge of being a pollywog and whatever else they could add on there, and you had to appear at court. The second day would be the court. They had the King Neptune as, it was quite a situation. And I was on watch. By the time I got off duty on my watch, they had another subpoena out to me. So I had 2 subpoenas, and then when I got there, did they give me the works. They cut chunks of hair off my head and spread oil in the rest of the hair, and then they brought me in front of King Neptune, and I had to kiss the tummy of the baby, King Neptune's baby. It had castor oil spread over his tummy, and we had to bend down and kiss it. And then we had to go through 2 lines of people that had already gone through the ceremony, and they were shellbacks, and we had to go through them, and they had all different things, and they whacked you as you went through, and I was ready to retire when I got through going through the ceremony.
Then you officially became a shellback?
Hmm?
After that, you officially became a shellback?
Oh yeah, they give you a card. It is a very, very important ceremony for the Navy.
So when you were on your way to New Caledonia, that was the first time you crossed the equator and you became a shellback. What did you do once you arrived at New Caledonia?
We visited. New Caledonia was a France possession, and we were quarantined for 3 weeks before any of us could go ashore.
Why?
We were quarantined, and finally we did go ashore. I forget actually how long we stayed there.
Izzy, why were you quarantined?
Because we were not a French ship. See, it was because we were an American ship, and I suppose the war made certain we wasn't allowed to go ashore. After, I would say we were there two or 3 months.
Now, while you were there, did those seaplanes come and join you?
Well, at that time, I don't think that we had the planes with us because we were in a foreign port. Our planes didn't come with us. They stayed in Hawaii.
So what were your duties during the time you were at New Caledonia?
Nothing. Just maintain the ship, live just like if I lived here. And when my tour of duty was appointed from 12 to 4 or from 4 to 8. No, in the evening it was dogged, 4 to 6, 6 to 8. That is so that the rotation would continue to rotate. If you did say 12 to 4 at night all the time, it would get pretty boring. So when you had one night, you would have 12 to 4 in the morning. The following day, you would have 4 to 6 in the morning. You would be able to go down and have dinner or breakfast. And at nighttime, you had 4 to 8. See, we dogged in the morning. I think it was morning. Yes, it was in the morning.
Well, when you were in New Caledonia, by now you fully realized that we were in a war. Back on Pearl Harbor, after the battle, what were your thoughts? Then you knew we were at war. Where were you when you actually found out that we were at war? Did you hear it on the radio?
Oh no, we talked about it that very day. In fact,
before FDR made his speech, you...
Oh, yeah, we didn't hear that for days. You know, we didn't have radios and things like that at our bunks.
When you fully realized what had happened at Pearl, what were your thoughts?
My thoughts were, will I survive the war? Will we be safe? What will happen to us? You know, and all that kind of thought. We would be in those raids every night. Charlie would come over in the Pacific when we was out there, and let's see, I can name off some of the islands. That was Wake. No, not Wake and Midway. That was before. New Caledonia, Espiritu Santo, Wake, Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Enawita, Kwajalein, Tinian,
Saipan.
Saipan. Oh yeah, how'd you you knew about Saipan?
You were in a lot of places, Izzy.
Oh, we were at every island that was...
Well, let's go through them in the order that you went. After New Caledonia, where was the next island you went to?
New Caledonia?
That was the first one, and when you left there, where did you go?
We went to New Hebrides.
And how long did you stay there?
14 months.
And did your little seaplanes join you there? So your job then was to tend
patrol. They would patrol every day. So many of them would go 10 hours of flying every day. Oh, that was a monotonous job. Those poor aviators, you know, what were they? Air crew. The crew of the ships would be the machine gunner and
Now, when you were on New Hebrides for the 14 months, were you still in the captain's gig, or were you the boat deck? What were your responsibilities?
I was still in the boat, the captain's gig.
After your 14 months at New Hebrides, where did you go?
We went back to Pearl to resupply. And we went to the States. We came back to the United States, and we were there 2 months.
In San Francisco?
Hmm?
San Francisco?
San Francisco.
What did you do for the 2 months that you were in San Francisco when they were resupplying? Did you still have to stay on board ship?
We were alongside a dock, and the ship was being repaired, because the first time we went back it was just repaired temporarily, and while we were there at that point is where they made the repairs beautiful, and they put new guns, machine guns, not the 5-inch guns. They were the same ones. We had 4 of them, 5-inch guns, and we had 10 20 millimeters, and we had 4 40 millimeters. They really equipped us very well with armament, and I had 7 days of leave.
Did you have time to go home to Connecticut?
Yes, I came home to Connecticut. I flew home.
What did you do in that 7 days of leave?
Just visited in Winsted, and
your family must have been thrilled to see you.
Oh, they were certainly happy to see me, and then they were bragging about me all the while. They were walking me up and down Main Street, and yeah, they were pretty proud of me. My brother Tony went into the Navy in 1942. After quite a while, he was 18 months younger than I, and they put him in the Navy too. So we used to correspond when we could.
After your leave at home, and you went back to get your ship, where did you go when you left the United States again?
We went back to Hawaii, and from Hawaii we went to in the WWII.
How long were you at WWII?
I don't think we were there more than a month, and then we went to Tarawa.
When you went to Tarawa, was it before the battle or after that battle?
The day after.
What was that like arriving?
Oh, it was completely destroyed. The island was completely flat from the bombing that we put it under. We bombed it every hour, on the hour, I think, and the fellows were dug underneath palm trees. You know, they dug a hole, put palm trees across so that they would be protected some, but there was bombs all over the place. I went ashore with the officers. I brought some officers aboard, and I went on shore, waiting for the officers to go back, and I found a prayer book. I may even have it there. I've got it with all my...
Well, we can look afterwards.
Yeah, a prayer book and some shrapnel. I think I've got the shrapnel with the flag. The flag that I've got there, the center of a parachute. Aboard ship, the plane that burnt up, smashed into our ship, I was able to get part of the parachute of that wasn't burnt, and I still have it. It's silk.
Wow.
Mm.
Did you get to see any of the Marines or talk to any of the Marines on Tarawa?
Oh, sure, but I don't recall. They were pretty busy building a strip, repairing the strip, and they were bombing Apamama and Kwajalein. They were in the process of invading, you know.
How long did the Curtis stay at Tarawa?
I would say let me say a month.
So approximately a month. It wasn't
approximately,
like 6 months.
Yes.
Where did you go after Tarawa?
We went to Apamama. That was one of the other major islands, and from there to Kwajalein. There wasn't much happened at Apamama. In Kwajalein, we prepared for the invasion of Tinian, Saipan, and Guam.
How long were you at Kwajalein?
I would say a couple months. We prepared, you know, for the invasion of...
What did you do for that preparation?
Just lived and did our duty, you know, every day. Just either maintain the ship. In fact, was I still as seaplane tender, I think I was still in the captain's gig, because it was a year, 2.5 years I spent in the gig. Yeah, I was still in the captain's gig, but, you know, we were appointed, we were keeping things clean and just regular duty.
After Kwajalein, where did you go?
We went to Tinian the day after the invasion. See, we had the admiral aboard ship. They were directing the war from our ship.
You had the admiral aboard your ship the whole time?
Yeah. He was assigned.
What was his name? Which admiral?
Well, there was Admiral Hoover. I can't think of the other admiral that we had aboard.
Is that why you went to these islands the day after all the battles? Like at Tarawa, you were there the next day, Tinian, you were there because the admiral was there on your ship, and you,
Yeah. We were moored, and all around the ship we had an anti-submarine net, so that in case we had some enemy planes come in with torpedoes, they would get stuck at the net. You know, they wouldn't go into the ship. We towed that with us as we went from place to place.
Okay, thank you.
What was Tinian like when you landed there? Did you go on shore?
No, not right away. The boats that were used were motor launches and whale boats. They were going back and forth to the island all the while, but the gig, the captain wasn't going too many places, you know, or officers. I didn't get to do too much on that island, although no, I thought I was going to say that it was Tinian, Saipan, and
so after Tinian you went to Saipan?
Saipan, and then to Guam.
And again, did you land at Saipan and Guam right after the battles?
Right after the battles. Right after the invasion. They were pretty sure, though, that we made short order invasions of those places. We were well equipped. Guam, it took a little while to capture Guam, and then I got transferred from the ship, and that was in 1945.
1945?
Yeah, I put the ship in commission in November the 15th of 40, and I left the ship October of 45.
Why were you transferred?
Well, because they didn't need a chief. When I made the grade, you know, then they would have to have so many crews, so they transferred me, and I had shore duty for the rest of my hitch.
You made chief. What was the actual rank? Is it chief? What?
Chief Petty Officer.
Where were you when you made Chief Petty Officer? Was that on Guam?
No, I had taken my test and all, but I actually got the rate in Port Hueneme, California.
When you were transferred, where did they transfer you to do your shore duty?
Hawaii. Well, they transferred me first from Guam to Hawaii.
At Pearl?
Yes. And then I came back on board the Utah, the battleship.
The USS Utah?
Yes.
And where was that?
That was at Pearl, and it was headed for Seattle.
Seattle, Washington, in the United States. So you actually were on the Utah and went to the back to the U.S.?
I did not become crew. I was just a passenger.
Oh. And then when you got to Seattle, where were you stationed?
I was stationed there at Bremerton for a month or two when they gave me 30 days leave.
And then did you go back home to Connecticut for 30 days?
Yeah, and that's when I met my first wife. She was living across the street over there in that house over there, Mrs. Cantelli. As a Winster boy, I had a car, and I was roaming around looking for the girls.
And you found one, huh? So that was on your 30 days off. You managed to do that.
I didn't get married.
No, but you met your future wife.
Yes.
And then you went back to Bremerton?
I went back to San Diego.
And how long did you stay in San Diego?
Well, I didn't stay very long. I was there 3 or 4 days, and they sent me across the bay to oh boy, I'm telling you, I got it right at the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of it. Where I went to school, anyhow. Isn't that odd? I can't think of it. It's right in the tip of my tongue. Not New Caledonia.
In the United States, was it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was.
Well, you'll think of it later. So and how long were you there?
Well, I was there. I went to school for 3 months.
What did you go to school for?
Chemical warfare.
Was that your choice or the Navy's choice?
The Navy's choice.
So what did you learn?
I learned how to teach, survive in chemical warfare.
Where did you go after your schooling?
Actually, my schooling was in, I used to be able to rattle those names off, like, and I can't think of it now. I can't think of it, but I went from there to Port Hueneme.
Where is that?
That was up on California, up on the coast. Port Hueneme, and then I had, I was there about 6 months, and I had given them, they sent me to decommission a base at Ojai, California. That's where they still have a famous golf course. It was taken over by the Navy for their officers' rehabilitation, and they sent me up there as chief to decommission the base. And it was from there that I finished my first hitch in the Navy. I was sent home for...
Wait a minute. You finished your first hitch? Did you sign up again?
Oh, in the reserves.
Oh.
I got 16 years of reserves.
How many years were you in the Navy, your first hitch?
6 years.
Wow. Now that base at Ojai, what did you have to do to decommission it?
Well, I didn't have to do much except to, I think I had 25 enlisted personnel, and we would patrol the base while the civilian people were working on it. They had made hills so that the officers could go to firing range, and they had built not houses, but shacks to live in, for us guys to live in, you know, and the fellows that were maintaining the golf course. And we had to just take all that down, take all that out, take the hills down with the bulldozers, and we would patrol. That's all. Me and there was one officer, one lieutenant over me, and we would patrol each day to make sure that there was nobody stealing stuff and you know, things like that.
Well, Izzy, we're going to take a break here, and this will end part 1 of your interview.
Mm-hmm.